risk of a shutdown is gone now, at least until September 30th, because of the budget bill Congress passed and President Trump signed. The bad news is agencies don't have much spending leeway because that bill was a continuing resolution. Tom Harker is president of the Harker Group. He's former Assistant Secretary of Financial Management Comptroller of the Navy. Dave Maders, Director for Business Development at the Partnership for Public Service and former Controller at the Office of Management and Budget. Gentlemen, welcome. Thanks for joining me. Dave, I start with you. What's the implication for financial management across the agencies? Because we've got a CR to deal with through the rest of the entire fiscal year.
I think, Francis, first of all, I think it's important to note that most of us that have been in government for, 20 or 30 years, continuing CRs are something that we've come to understand how to operationalize. But the challenge that it is, and it's in particular in this case where we've had a transition between parties, right? Because the former president submitted his budget for 2025, the Congress started working on that back in the spring, then we had the election, then we had the CR. So agencies have been sort of frozen in place, waiting for the CR or an omnibus bill or whatever was going to be passed. So that really caused them to not spend according to what they thought were their priorities. But now we're waiting for a new administration. We're anxiously waiting for the president's 2026 budget because that's going to be a signal to the agencies for the balance of the current CR as to what those priorities could be.
Does that inform at all, Tom, what agencies will do until September 30th, what the president says he wants to do after September 30th?
Yes, it's still being developed. I think the 26 budget is being developed by all the different agencies. I know DoD is currently working on theirs to figure out exactly where they're going to spend their money. Having the CR, though, gives the agencies a lot of flexibility. When you look at the Navy's operations and maintenance funding, it's one number. It's not broken down in all the different program plan activities like you would normally see, so it gives the administration a lot of flexibility. The Appropriations Committee, Subcommittee on Defense chairs have each sent, actually sent a joint letter to the Department of Defense saying, here's 181 pages of how we think you should spend this money, but none of that is required by law. And so it's going to be an interesting time.
What do you watch for markers when those letters go to the Hill and then, go to the building, and then the building responds either in writing or in action?
The Pentagon has, or the administration has 30 days to send in their baseline of here's how we're breaking it up and here's what we plan on spending. The CR gave them $8 billion of reprogramming authority so they can move around 1% of the total budget after they finish that 30-month or 30-day baseline. The challenge is going to be, will they deliver the 30-day baseline in 30 days, or will they just keep spending as if there's no baseline? It's interesting.
Is there a right answer or a wrong answer, or if an agency chooses one line of action or the other, what's the recourse, I guess?
The law was passed saying thou shalt do this, but there's also a law that say appropriations shall be issued as of October 1st each year, and that didn't happen either. So it's not violating the law. A lot of times it's challenging to get that baseline approved. It has to go through the various wickets inside the Pentagon, then over to OMB before it goes to the Hill.
At the agency level, Dave, what is available, what resources, tools are available to the CFOs to be able to do things that may become administration priorities like VSIPs, VERAs, and so on?
Yeah.
That money's got to come from somewhere.
Yeah, and I think what's really challenging for the civilian agencies is in the continuing resolution, actually $18 billion was moved in discretionary funds from the civilian agencies to DoD and Border Protection. So I think when agencies on the civilian side start to receive their apportionment from OMB, and they look at the spending that they've done to date, and then they look at some of the, the new president's directives around downsizing the workforce, they're going to have to do a lot of modeling to see, how do I do VERA VSIPs? How do I, maintain current level of spending, but at the same time keep an eye on whatever they're putting together with OMB for 2026.
An EO from the White House on shipbuilding recently, Tom, you saw that, and that's something that obviously an EO doesn't have money behind it, so it will be incumbent, I imagine, on your successors in the Navy to decide how to start moving forward on that also, budget-wise.
Very much so. It won't just be the Navy, though. It's actually, I think, 6 different cabinet agencies in that EO. It talks about, commerce, state, Homeland Security, others, to go in and revitalize America's shipbuilding capability. A lot of that needs to come on the commercial space because other countries typically they have their defense side and their commercial side, so that as one grows, the other would shrink, et cetera. And you have a lot of the costs being carried by the commercial side. And so for U.S., our shipbuilding is not doing well. Well, ships are being delivered late, off program. It's taking much longer and much more money. And so this is an area where it's probably the most important thing that I think the Trump administration is focused on.
And is that something that you'll track as the 26 budget request comes out to see if the money is where the sentiment is?
Yes, absolutely. You'll see that with the 26 budget, but you'll also see it through additional steps in the EO. Tasks the 6 cabinet agencies to go pull together a plan that's going to be executable, that'll focus on a lot of these things, collecting a lot more in port fees from foreign flag vessels. So the goal there would be to get other countries and their shipping companies to pay for some of this work to offset the costs that the U.S. government will bear.
A lot of the focus on what is going on in government now has been on dealing with whatever the topic du jour is. If you're back in your former offices, I'll start with you in a moment, Dave. How are you strategizing today for what you might be dealing with in the fall, in the winter, next spring, a year from now, and so on, to try to stay ahead of the game, understanding that we don't know what the White House might put out next week or the week after? Is there a way to try to get ahead of this, Dave?
I mean, I do think. I mean, I think the administration, with the issuance of the executive orders, is a clear indication of priorities going forward. And those priorities are going to be reinforced in the 2026 budget. We're going to put dollars to those priorities. So if I were sitting as a CFO in an organization, I would be looking at, what has been issued, the work that I'm doing with OMB, and then step back and say, what's my baseline? What's my current state? Because, again, I'm on the civilian side. The civilian side is going to shrink, and it could shrink dramatically. We've seen it, with some of the proposals with education. So the role of the CFO is basically starting to forecast what do I need to do between now and September 30th in anticipation to a much lower budget number for 2026 and beyond.
And from that agency CFO's perspective, how does that impact potentially the relationship with your former office at OMB, where you're understanding what they're telling you and what they're expecting to get back from you data-wise and information-wise and so on?
Well, I mean, I think at this point, with folks being put in now positions, they're going to be carrying the message from OMB and the president and bringing it back to their agency and crafting whatever changes need to be made going forward.
Tom, how would you advise strategizing for the next 6 months, year, maybe 2 years?
So CFOs need to look at what are the priorities, where do they have shortfalls that they need to apply resources, and then how are they going to harvest those resources from other programs that aren't priorities. There's going to be people leaving. That's already happening with some of the president's initiatives. You're going to see contracts being cut by DOGE and then also by actions from inside the departments. And that's going to free up resources that need to be applied. But in order to get that money spent at the end of the fiscal year, a lot of those actions have to start now. And so this is where the CFOs are going to be looking at it and saying, okay, I know shipbuilding is a priority, so what do I need to do now so that a contract can be awarded before the funds expire? Same thing with Southwest Border, other areas where we know this is going to be a priority of the administration. Redirecting the funds now, but also tell your people, plan on being able to spend a lot more than you currently have in your budget, because there will be funding that's available from people being cut and contracts being cut.
We have less than a minute left. Do you expect that this Q4 will be maybe the busiest Q4 ever because of the compression and the things that we've discussed in this conversation?
Yes, and I also think it's going to be one of the first scenarios where you'll see leadership of the administration looking at it and saying, it's okay if you don't spend all of your money. We're okay giving money back and decreasing the deficit.
30 seconds, Dave. Q4, busiest ever?
Yes, not only from the CFO's perspective, but from the human capital perspective, especially with Vera Visip. And, everybody's got RIF plans going now, and those have to be executed by September 30th, because basically you've got to lower your FTE count going into the new fiscal year.
Dave, Tom, terrific to have you on the program. Thanks very much for joining me. You can read more